Welcome to Risky Thoughts with Rob and Roy.
I'm Rob.
And I'm Roy. And today we are going to talk about ass kissing in the workplace. Okay, so every place that I have worked, right? Like I just, what I notice is that there's always people who are insecure about their position and their status, right? And I'm just not where I'm working currently. Where I'm working currently is pretty good. You know what I mean? But it still follows a rule that every workplace has these people who suck up, who kind of gossip. You know, my rule is that I don't say anything bad about anyone. Like, people will ask me, they're like, yo, what do you think about this person? What do you think about that person? I'll never say anything. I'll literally try to say the words I can't say. Like, I don't, you know, like, because like by doing that, like, you're really kind of just, it's almost a cheat. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's like people will talk shit to deflect attention off themselves. It's a strategy that we've always used when we're kids. You know, right when we're kids. You know, I've seen little children, like, you know, some of my cousins. You know, someone takes something, and the one kid will blame the other kid who took it. You know what I mean? Who can't talk or who can't defend himself. You know what I mean? So, like, this ass kissing is a form of people pleasing, in my opinion. It's like, you know, so to separate it a little bit further, it's like there's that manipulation, gossip, politics, right? And then there's like the ass kissing, which is like, you know, stroking the ego and things like that. Like, it's I catch myself doing it, and I'm just kind of wondering, like, to what degree is it okay? You know what I mean? Like, that's why I understand that it's a natural thing. We're social beings, and people at the bottom of the status are like, they're going to employ anything they can to survive in a workplace. So they're going to kind of implement these tactics, right? And when I see people, I'm starting to get like a little bit triggered at people who do this, because it was such a integral part of the old Roy. You know?
Okay, so I want to break down a few things, because I think most people will say that they hate people who are like this.
Yeah, but
I think a lot of these people who say that are actually belonging to the subset of people who are like this.
Yes.
And it's like the, I mean, I don't know what episode or what interview with Jordan Peterson. We've mentioned him a lot lately, but he was talking about, like, living in the era of the Nazis. And he said, you know, you'd like to believe that you would be someone who actually stands up against the Nazis and you're going to fight for what's right. But the actual probability is that you're more likely to just join them.
Absolutely.
And I think this is similar to that, right? Like, it's easy to look from the outside and be like, oh, what an ass kiss this guy is. Mm-hmm. And he's just sucking up to score points with the boss.
Yeah.
And, like, I would naturally say that, yeah, I agree. And I think it's a frustrating thing to see people do, because, like, and maybe it comes from a place of jealousy. Maybe that's why I get frustrated by it, because perhaps it works for some people and they do advance in their careers by taking these steps. But the more important thing that I'm curious about is, like, if your boss is willing to advance the career of your coworker because he's kissing his ass, or her ass, I should say, what does that say about your boss? If your boss can't differentiate merit through competency and like work, mm-hmm. versus someone just, like, stroking their ego, then they're not very good leaders either, because, like, I would want to work for somebody who can recognize that this person is trying to kiss my ass.
Yeah.
And they're actually not producing anything that's tangibly productive for the company. Mm-hmm. So, like, this is a sad attempt at, like, trying to move up the ladder in a very, like, cheating kind of way. And I would expect a good boss and a good leader to recognize that, and maybe not punish the person for it, because, again, they could recognize that it is a natural human response.
Yeah.
But at least not credit them for, you know, doing what they're doing. You know what I mean? Like, I just think that when people do this, because I'm sure I've done it at times too, like without even realizing I was doing it.
Oh, 100%.
Because again, you and I are both people pleasers, so we have a natural instinct to want to stroke the ego. It's just part of who we are.
Whenever you drop like a compliment,
Yeah.
it's like there is this inherent like a feel good for the other person.
Yeah, it doesn't even have to be a compliment. It could just be something where it's a pleasurable comment.
Right.
It could be like, hey man, like, I don't know, maybe your boss is a golfer.
Yeah.
Did you watch the fucking Masters this weekend? Like, that is sucking up to the boss.
Yes.
Maybe you're not trying to because maybe you're genuinely wanting to talk about the Masters that you watched on the weekend. But indirectly, you are actually scoring points with the boss by doing that because you're making him a friend.
Oh, you're making him a friend, and it makes it even harder for that guy to administer like
disciplinary action towards
disciplinary actions or even having conversation. It makes it harder for them. It's even like when you're selling something to somebody, it's like you inherently, the longer the call goes on, you know, you start to feel bad for the person you're on the phone with, because now it's just like you have to say no. It's like you feel you wasted their time. Like it's that type of feeling. This is a different situation, but it's very similar. And you know, the more compliments you give, then it's harder for that person to kind of, you know, give you like critical feedback on your skills, right? And it's very difficult because okay, so I see certain people, definitely people who maybe like seem like they might be on the spectrum, who actually are very competent. Like their competence is so high that they don't need to do this type of activity. You know what I mean?
Just because their performance speaks for itself.
Their performance speaks for themselves. They might never, they have definitely sometimes problems getting other people to do work, right? And having those conversations. But, you know, when it comes to their organization and things like that, and, you know, their work, it's always like very meticulous, you know what I mean? But for the rest of us, that's only a select few, right?
Yeah, and I want to separate like buttering up your boss is not the same thing as throwing a coworker under the bus for your own gain.
Yeah,
there's a big difference there. Like I think I will always indirectly butter up my bosses, but it's not with it. My intention is not to do it because I want to win them over. It's just because I'm a social person who likes to have a good time with everybody. So I don't consider it like done with particular intention. But one thing I will not do, or I try definitely not to do, because I was trained from many old bosses not to do this. I would never throw a coworker under the bus with the intention of it making me look good. I will throw a coworker under the bus if I think it's going to hurt the company if it doesn't get discussed. But I won't throw a coworker under the bus specifically for personal gain.
Right. But anytime you do throw someone under the bus, it inherently in like the definition of status, it's like it's going to boost you up. Like
maybe, but like I think it's about intention then, right? Because like I can give an example very specifically, but I would prefer not to, just because I currently am employed at where I am. But the point I'm trying to make here is that like there are times when, okay, here's a hypothetical. This is not work related at my specific work now, but let's say you worked. It doesn't even matter where you worked somewhere, and you guys, you know, your job was to, I don't know, do the dishes in the kitchen. Okay, let's just say you guys were dish pick guys.
Yes.
And your coworker was clocking in at whatever time he's supposed to start, and then he would sneak off and go take a nap for 8 hours that he was punched in, and then he would clock out and go home, and then he would collect a paycheck every week.
Right.
Do you think that you are in a position, like, do you feel obligated to have to tell your employers about this behavior? Like, do you think it's the right thing to do, or do you think the right thing to do is just to not say anything?
Yeah. See, like, binary thinking people probably already made up their mind. You know, by now, I think it's a yes or a no. And, you know, it's obviously complicated. And I think it goes back to an intention. It's like, what's the intention of your move here, and like what are your options really? What are your options? How can you deal with this solution, right? Like you could try to motivate this guy to say, hey, listen, bro, like get your shit together. It's like it's not fair that you're getting paid and I'm working. You know what I mean?
I don't think that part is even relevant.
Okay.
I don't think you should never compare the fact that you're working and he's not, and you're both being paid. That's irrelevant because you have no reason to give a shit about what his performance is.
Yeah.
Like as it relates to his pay in comparison to you. That's one thing I can't stand. When people tell me like, oh, I'm being overworked, but the guy that's in the position equal to me is getting away with doing nothing. That's not fair. Well, I don't give a fuck. I don't care.
Okay.
That's not your place to make that decision.
But it does affect you.
Why? Why should it?
Because you want to be around people who are, if someone who's not working, he's lowering like the competition. And for me, the competition is a drive. You know what I mean? So I'm not saying that like, you know, in a sense of using that excuse and you don't understand it, I feel sure you should not do it. But, you know, one reason is like I come to work every day to work as a team. Like I want to work as a team.
But your tasks are not related as a team. What if your tasks are mutually exclusive?
Okay, if they're mutually exclusive, then like it's definitely something that on an ethical, moral, and legal sense is like you should bring it up to your employer. That someone's just he's not doing the work. He's just kind of, I don't want to use the word time frauding, but like he's just not doing work, right? So it's something that you would want to bring up to your leader.
Now, would you consider you doing that to be an act of an ass-kissing type of behavior?
I think a part of that is going to inherently increase your value, right?
Okay, so let me rephrase the question. You started this episode by saying that like you were frustrated with people who were like this. You coined a particular you were obviously referring in your mind of a certain type of person.
So
would you qualify someone who went and ratted this person out to be that type of person?
In this situation, no.
Okay.
In this situation, I would not consider this person to be breaking any of the rules of Roy. But I do think that like I said, it inherently increases your status when you bring this information because now you're more valuable, and it means that the leader can rely on you to give critical information for him to manage.
You've developed trust.
You've developed some level of trust, right? I'm looking at more of like where people are insecure with themselves and their own work, and they're really also kind of fucking the dog, and they're not really pushing themselves to the max, and then they will go out of their way to throw some shade on another employee. Like my mom, like she worked at a hospital, and this is essentially what happened to her. Like she really, we didn't believe her at first, and then I kind of realized this is true. So I'm checking some of the facts of what happened. It's just like, and the prevalence of it in the workplace, this kind of like mutiny and stuff like that, like events like those occurring very often, where the person at the bottom, which could have been my mom, is now like, thrown a significant amount of shade. And it can really damage people's psyche. And why are they doing it? There's multiple reasons why I think they do. I think there's as a human part, like even through stories, it's like the one person on the ship where if it's like raining, they'll throw one guy off as like like that's the reason. Like there's always a scapegoat, and it's kind of, we're subtly trying to change the subject here into like scapegoating, right? One person. You know what I mean? And the effects it has on that person, right? But okay, let's rewind a little bit before we get into that topic there. But
yeah, so I'm very curious because like I'm still not feeling like we have clearly defined what you consider to be offside. right? And like bad behavior as it relates to being, because I know like at a high level, I intuitively I feel what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You know, like
I know.
there's the person who comes to you who like intentionally is feeding information that discounts another person's credibility strictly for the purposes of trying to falsely develop that trust with their employer. I know what you're talking about. And there's more to it than just that specific type of behavior. Like that, what I just explained is only one of many elements of behavior that make up this character.
Yeah, it's like, you know, the word throwing under the bus.
Yeah, I would say that they have very low integrity. Like there's something about integrity in here that we're touching on it, and it's a part of this, but I'm not sure if it's the full element of it. Like I would consider a person who does this to have, like I said, very low integrity, right? They actually have very low self-confidence as well.
Yeah.
They have very little faith in proving themselves through proof of work.
Yeah.
Right? And all of these things are just bad. And I agree with you. Like this is not healthy behavior for an employee or for a person. No. And if you take it out of the workplace and you put it into the personal life, like, you know, one thing about my parents that I've always respected is that no matter how uncomfortable a situation ever was when I was growing up, they never took the time to be like, it's because of X, Y, or Z. They never placed blame on something that was causing me discomfort. They just tried to get me to be comfortable. I'm not explaining this very well, but like, they never gave a shit about the cause of what was making me uncomfortable or in pain or whatever.
Right.
They never were like, well, Rob, it's because this person's doing that to you, or it was never about like they just acted to solve the problem. Mm-hmm. Right? There was no discussion about placing blame or looking in any other direction. There was only one thing in their sight, and that was fixing what was wrong with me. Mm-hmm. Right? So if I was in pain because I was being bullied, it's not like my parents would ever be like, oh, you know, Rob, you know, you're feeling this way because that person is going through this and it's their, you know, it's their parents' fault. Like they would never explain whose fault it was. It didn't matter whose fault it was. The fact of the matter was I was being hurt. Yeah. And they instinctively took action to solve that problem. And they never reverted to talking about the cause and placing blame somewhere, right? And I think that that's something that I've always really respected without ever thinking about this. Yeah. I've kind of like always subconsciously respected this about my parents.
Right.
Because it is very interesting that parents, when you're a kid and you grow up, you think of your parents as being like superheroes.
Right.
Right? Well, what makes them superheroes to you? What makes them like unbreakable? What makes them perfect? Mm-hmm. Right? Because to a kid, you are perfect. And I think it has a lot to do with like, listen, if you're the kind of parent who ever places blame or tries to pass off an excuse to not deal with something that's bothering your child, you will not be viewed as a superhero by your children. Mm-hmm. Sorry, like it's just not. They're going to grow up very quickly and realize that.
Well, I think they won't. I think they will actually adopt the same blaming.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that they're going to view it as a positive. Well, maybe you're right. Maybe
I think if that's the way they've like coped with things, like, you know, oh, this thing fell down, like, because in my family we're just a bunch of blamers. I'm the only one who just like, I will blame on more of like a systemic problem. That's where I'll assign the blame, like kind of very arbitrarily. I will never blame a person. You know, I was watching that like The Boys, right? That the Amazon show, and that entire fucking like show is all about fucking social validation and but you know, the villains right off the bat, they're doing heinous things to people, right? And you know, the very shocking things, like it's definitely more like a Game of Thrones type esque. You know, right off the bat, it's a fucking really tragic event happens, right? But like, I can't for some reason blame these villains, right? Like I instantly, I know that there's some sort of like maladaptive, either a parenting or behaviors being passed on, and that's the reason for it, right? You know what I mean? So I'm not, right off the bat, I'm not hating them. Like it's definitely shitty, and you want some cathartic win to happen, but at the same time I'm also not like, I'm like, it's very arbitrary, it's you know, we you know, this is a story I read about vegans. Like, so I am someone trying to become a vegan. I'm vegetarian. I've done a fucking phenomenal job so far. I'm still, when I went to so I just recently came back from Vancouver, and you know, everyone's just kind of saying like, man, Roy's still on this vegetarian shit, like and I'm getting a lot better at it. Like, I've like my dishes look fucking good. People are like, yo, this looks good, bro, like, you know, whatever you're eating, like, and it's just like, yeah, there's no meat, you know what I mean? But I saw on Instagram a woman got kicked in the face and trampled because she was trying to take the baby calf away from the mom. So mothers, just like women, if you take the baby away, they will get aggressive. So no one wants to get their baby taken away. So this person took the baby away, and then she got trampled and kicked and stomped on. And then by the mother cow. Very sad. I have an emotional reaction because it's for some reason I'm the transition between, you know, all the mammals on this planet, it's kind of blurring out to me because I don't know, whatever is happening, right? But that's besides the point. The point is, like, everybody on the comment section, so these are vegans, pro-life, pro people, are like, yeah, fuck this woman, like, yeah, like 14,000 likes, a woman died.
That's crazy,
right? So it's like there's a cognitive dissonance happening here. Like, it's just like, you guys don't like what's happened. It's like, what side are you on? Like, you know what I mean? It's like, once again, you guys are just as bad as the fucking, I made a comment, you know what I mean? You guys are just as bad as the opposing team, right? Of people eating meat. You guys are fucking like hailing the fact that a woman got trampled and killed. She too was doing the fucking job to probably provide for her kids. You guys don't think about that though. You just pick a side, and this is where I get a little bit angry, like, because perhaps this is not even in me. Yeah, this is something that I'm very uniquely known for, not for spreading out the fucking spread sheet and splitting up the causes. Like, you know, we're just, you know, we're instantly like, this is bad. You know what I mean? The same with blaming. We're gonna just chuck the blame here, you know, like at this person. You know what I mean? So, and it's an effective tool because, like, that blame, it's actually like, I think we were talking about in one episode, outrage porn, right? Like, it's just like, if we blame one person and we get mad at him, you know what I mean? Like, people that I've worked with were on their last line of chances of getting fired, sent home, right? And like, the group scapegoats very quickly. They're like, it's all his fault. It's all his fault. This job's going sideways. Da 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 da. But like this, you know, that's a problem based, and it's very easy to go problem based, right? And where I see it is, you know, even though I am a pessimist, I try to look for the solution, right? I'm like, okay, what's the solution? Is this like, you know, maybe we have to work with the guy, you know what I mean? Maybe we have to like try to bring him in, you know,
make him
better, right? Let's increase the competition, you know what I mean? Like, let's make the competition better, right? Because then I'm going to get better. There's self-interest there, right? Anyways, it's just,
but sometimes even if you try to make the person better, sometimes they're just not capable.
They're not capable. Okay.
And I'm not saying that justifies throwing the guy under the bus. Like, that's not what I'm saying here.
Right. They're not capable and they're not meant for the job. I get it. There's different roles. You know, people play different roles in the job. You know what I mean? So,
I think maybe the approach, like, I'm trying to think of in that example, like, what is the very practical reaction that is, you know, within the ethics of Roy and Rob?
Yeah.
Or specifically, it could be different, but I'm going to aggregate our thoughts right now for a second. Yeah. Like, what is the practical approach there that is what we would consider to be the right thing to do? Ratting the guy out to the boss, or actually not ratting him out, and just not placing the blame on his shoulders completely, but rather than speaking up at the point in time, like, to the bosses to be like, oh, it's his fault. No. Maybe the team should stand united and just say, hey, listen, we failed here. Mm-hmm. but we're going to fix it. And then once that statement is made, you know, you take the gentleman aside who you because maybe you truly believe it's his fault.
Yeah.
Then you take him aside privately afterwards as the team, as a unit.
Yeah.
And you all sit him down and say, listen, let's say the guy's name is John.
Yeah.
John, you're not pulling your weight. And we understand. We would like to make sure that, you know, perhaps you don't think that he's putting the effort. So if that's the case, you'd say, well, John, we feel as a team here that you're actually just not trying. That's the problem here. Maybe it's just he's not capable. In which case you'd say to him, look, John, I don't think you're cut out for this type of gig.
Yeah.
We didn't want to embarrass you in public in front of the boss, but we really think that you need to have, you know, a reconsideration of your position in the company.
Right.
That's the appropriate way to handle it.
100%. I agree with that. It definitely, I think getting the entire team is ideal because it requires maturation from all individuals. If that's true and you guys cultivate that energy, sure, I think that's a great thing to like have a kind of discourse, dialogue, conversation with everybody included. These things I do also notice like in the group setting, because there's always that one person who just inherently goes towards blame. It's just like it kills the vibe of it, right?
Yeah, and I think I agree with you.
Yeah.
I think it's detrimental to the team as a whole. It's actually not healthy for that individual as well because it's going to keep them in a problem-focused mentality, even for their own. Because there's a time when they have to blame themselves in life, right? And if they're always going to deflect and place blame elsewhere, they're never going to grow where they're lacking.
So one way that I've learned to deal with it, and before I do take comments, I'm a very joking person, but like when it comes to blame, like I for some maybe I'm too sensitive, but I've learned one coping mechanism, not coping, but like a strategy is like, you know, hey, what the hell, man? This taking forever, or like, did you fuck this up? Right, you know what I mean? And like, if you didn't, like, I'll just tell them to say, suck it. Like, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like, it's just, you have to joke back at them, right? There's going to be ball busting, right? And, you know, you have to, you know, standing your ground is key. If people who are nice like me, it's hard at first, but you know, the more you do it, the easier it becomes. When that typically starts to happen, and if it all depends on the parties involved. Some people will do it and they'll let go, but some people will blame you and joke around with you to your face, and they'll be nice to you in your face, and then they'll just kind of go behind your back and start that kind of dialogue with the managers or stuff like that. Like, that's just in the past. Like I said, it's nothing to do with my current work. Like, my current work is very positive, right? It's just, you know, watching The Boys and hearing about my mom. Okay, you know what I mean?
Can we explore The Boys again for a second? I wanted to bring it back to that. One thing that I recognize in The Boys, and you will also recognize in pretty much any other storytelling, is that the protagonist generally never wants recognition for their achievements.
Yes.
Like, they never want it. They never look for the applause.
No.
Right? A lot of the time, actually, they specifically make it clear that the protagonist is intentionally trying to avoid being recognized for their right doings. Like the story of Batman, for example, right? He doesn't want to be known for who he is.
Yes.
Right? He specifically pushes that away.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, that's something, there's something very real.
Aragorn from Lord of the Rings, you know?
Yes.
Superman, you know, we can keep going on and on and on.
Well, even in The Boys, like again, let's not spoil things, but like the main characters also, they do not seek recognition.
No.
But the bad guys always do.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's something obviously very typical in those stories that applies to human behavior. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in every story, right? So it's recognizable. However, I do want to ask one thing here. If someone succeeds in life, and that's actually a statement that is poorly worded because the definition of success can be manipulated to suit.
If they're able to survive.
Sure, I don't even want to say survive either, but let's say a person takes actions to achieve goals they have set for themselves. And the actions that they take to get to those goals include running over people to benefit themselves. So what do you say to the people who make it all the way to the achievement of those goals through, you know, bad intentioned actions.
Yeah, it feels like an injustice.
It definitely feels that way.
Yeah.
But like, is there something actually wrong with it? Have these people done something
wrong? Yeah, like there's a lot of they classify this under like the dark triad of personality traits, Machiavellianism. Like, you know, these are like, you know, Machiavelli himself said like, hey, listen, Prince, you're gonna have to do these things to fucking play this game of ruling Rome. You know what I mean? And keeping all the houses united. So, you know, Machiavelli told the young prince, it's called The Prince, that's the book, but they are very deceitful. Like, they're deceitful.
Sure, but I mean, my point is like, the question I had asked is like whether or not it was right or wrong. And I think my position is like right and wrong are subjective things. There's no like finite right and wrong. At least I don't see it yet. There's an argument that could be made that when you evaluate our system, and our system being like the human species as a whole, you may be able to classify some rights and wrongs as it relates to the benefit of the whole, you know, from a utilitarian perspective. Mm-hmm. But on an individual level, right and wrong can be manipulated. Like, I mean, would you consider it wrong to murder somebody? And I think the answer for that question is always definitively going to be yes, you should never murder somebody. Right. But what if you have to murder somebody to save your child? Now, does it justify the murder? So the question is like, you can't say right and wrong, because my point is the person whose objective was to get to the top of the ladder in their company, what's right for them is to be at the top of the ladder. Sure. So they have satisfied said request to be at the top of the ladder. So have they done wrong to them? Like, in their mind, have they done wrong? No. To you as a third person observer, perhaps.
Yes.
But that's also being viewed through your perspective and your value structure and your lens. Yeah. So I don't know, like, to say definitively that these people have done wrong. I think these people have taken a course that took them to where they are. Yeah. And unfortunately,
like, so the point is, like, these guys have these people have, because unfortunately, like, it's like politics, corporations, it's kind of riddled with this behavior. People with this kind of dark triad do succeed in this realm.
But where do they must suffer somewhere? There's got to be a trade-off.
It's insecurity. Like, they I think as you increase those amount of traits, you're going to get a higher level of insecurity, right? Because it's like a
so you think they suffer from like an internal anxiety?
Yeah, like you're well, I would say yes. The anxiety is towards like this fear of not succeeding, right? And also as you move up inherently, like your security decreases. Like you're going to be
fear of falling back down. Increases.
And then you've got now your competition increases, and you've got so much like combating you. It's just like the wholesome, good, heroic traits. It's we don't see it too often. That's why I said, like, when I met that person from my company now, which is like amazing, it's like that dude, like, he displayed like these heroic traits very well. I've never seen that before. And it's actually very, like, it works. Like, you know, he's an ability to let go, you know, always caring about the group. Like, you know, when work is done, he's still caring about the group, you know, high competence, all these type of things is like, you know, just, but at the end of the day, it's just like, even that, it's hard to fight, like I said, that dark triad. Like, it doesn't, it's almost like it's not, like, it's not survival. It's not fit for like the survival of a corporate political system.
Okay, so what I find to be fascinating is that, like, if you're to compare these personality types to, like, if you were to take the personality types, like take the description of these characters that we're describing in the political or business model, who are succeeding through these mechanisms, if you were to strip away the fact that they're in the setting of the workplace and they're striving to achieve something, and you were to replace their physical body with a child's body, you wouldn't call them people who are actually striving for success. You would just call them bullies. Because like that's the same traits that a bully has. These are the same characteristics that are like that you can see very clearly on bullies. A lot of insecurity that leads to these sort of poor decision making moments where they actually will subdue their colleague or their peers to make themselves feel better.
Right. I think like I said, I would go to the, is it right or wrong? I think I'm going to just say it is what it is, right? Like so if you're doing those things, you're doing those things and you're playing that game. And it's just like, if you're playing that game, if you play it the best, you're going to move up the ladder.
Yeah. But you're still always going to be dealing with consequences from that behavior. That's what I wanted to get to.
From committing those actions, because it's like it's a very like, all these realms are about maintaining the optics and your persona, right? But it's not leading to self-actualization.
Yeah,
right?
there's no actual progress on the self.
No, there's no progress on the self. So we go to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's like, yeah, you got this social acceptance, but not really. You have like a very like incomplete social acceptance.
Yeah, I don't think you have social acceptance at all. Most people will actually probably think you're a dickhead.
You're a dickhead, and it's like, the social acceptance is like, today, like I came home, I got my friend, he came and picked me up. Very nice of you. Thank you very much. And so it's like, you're not going to get that using the dark triad, because as soon as it's all about optics, it's all about, your personal gain, right? Yeah. So these things you're not necessarily going to get. Like the people that I hang out with and I always try to capture in my life, it's like I will take them out of work and I'll go hang out with them. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Because it's just like, these are the people that like I know could have my back. You know what I mean? Like, they're not about the optics. It's like, oh, if I help Roy here, it's like, what's in it for me? That what's in it for me is like a very, like, it's a zero sum game, right? Like, there's a benefit and a positive, but in reality, it's like, that's not anything on this Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You're not fulfilling your needs by doing this. Sure, you get money and resources, but to a certain point, like, you don't need it. We already know that.
Agreed. I think this is all reducing back to the same shit that we've talked about in many episodes, and it's been a common theme on all of our stuff. Yeah. And it's all about us having a belief that the development of the self is of the utmost importance. Yeah. And taking these paths that lead you down the road of materialism, consumerism, status, external validation, all of these things, they're all fruitless. They actually hold no weight. Yeah. And they actually will not bring you as a human, as a person, to a place of peace and like, a state of nirvana, for example, right? You'll never reach it through these mechanisms. And the heroic path gets you there because they actually... By taking the road of the hero, you actually are taking on actions that are they're just more fulfilling. They have a much more sustained benefit, right? Yes. Everything that you do through the this other path, you may feel like there's benefit, but it's always temporary. It's always in transition, right? And you're always chasing the next step to make you feel fulfilled. Yeah. Whereas you take the heroic approach and you feel truly fulfilled.
So, an exercise I've been kind of doing in the past week, continuing on from last episode, just to kind of wrap things up too, is like, I've been very close to monitor compliments given towards me. Before, I would feel very like energetic and happy for the entire day, and it would be amazing, right? And as soon as I get a negative comment, I'm like down. You know what I mean? So now I'm kind of trying to take more of a balanced approach to be very monitoring. I'm trying to monitor what I am getting high on. You know what I mean? Like the compliments, like the praise, the good job, Roy, pat on the back, and man, this job was done really well. I'm not accepting those. You know what I mean? And it's just an interesting experiment that I am running, and how it's going so far is that I'm still very kind of in a bad place, because I've realized so much of what I've been doing so far was this social validation, this playing the game, this like not trying not to be in like a Machiavellian type of way, but this small compliments. I would do work just to get praise.
Yeah, you're not doing it for your own praise.
I'm not doing it for my own praise. And like I said, I've had conversations with people, and some people just like doing a job to get it done perfectly. You know what I mean? And just for their own sake, right? There's a monetary part involved, and it makes this a big war zone, because it's like, you know, it's their bread, it's their livelihood, and people will do anything. And we're in hard times where, you know, people will do anything to bring some food home. You know what I mean? So it's that's why I said I don't like hate the player. I'm gonna hate the game, but you know, it's something that we can bring more awareness to, so that we can, you know, be more vigilant. So when people throw shade at you, you know, maybe you can just be aware of it at least. Maybe I don't know exactly how to.
Well, the cognition is the first step, obviously,
yeah,
in taking the action. So, yeah, man, I'm in support of a lot of what you said at the end there. I think that when you take the steps to perform at work for the responses from others, is the wrong approach. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's anything wrong with receiving a compliment and being happy with the receipt of the compliment. But I think that when the question is, when you're performing the task that was complimented, were you thinking about getting the compliments?
Right.
Because if you were, then you're doing it wrong. If you were doing it to just do it and to get it done and to be proud of what you've done,
yes,
you're doing it right. And then at that point, if you get compliments, great. And if you don't,
yes,
you know,
that's definitely an amendment to what the experiment I'm running right now. Because I'm just like, I'm in this not accepting anything, just to be just to kind of clean the slate and to understand, you know, cleanse the palate, if you will. When I used to go to the Buddhist temple, that's essentially exactly what they taught us. They're like, you know, we all have to eat, right? So when you're eating, you're going to naturally get a sensation. What do you just like suppress that sensation? He's like, no, you are aware of it. This tastes good. Next, you know what I mean? Like, that's it.
Keep it simple.
If it's attached to something of what you need, fucking get the pleasure. And this actually goes far beyond just eating and social validation. It goes to sex and gambling and everything else. You know what I mean? And our addictions, essentially, all of our addictions, you know, food, everything. So it's like, you know, you take what you need and you can feel happy. Like, there's nothing wrong with feeling happy and feeling sustained and having those sensations. But, you know, just understand that, like, it's going to go away. And, okay.
And you move on.
Move on. Whatever the next task is, whatever next need you need is, right? But, you know, this of trying to maintain your position and the optics. And it's just, I don't know. Like, it's something that's just very disheartening.
Yeah, and I understand. And I think there's usually a dark undertone to a lot of our episodes, and you know, it's not because we're dark people. The irony of what we produce on these podcast episodes is that it sounds like we're actually very negative people, and the reality is we're quite the opposite. And that's I find that hilarious. But anyway, we did sort of talk last episode that we would bring up redemption in a future episode, and we still plan to do that. But we need Zhang back for that part of it, I think.
Yes.
But I like the fact that you slipped addiction into the end of this episode, because that is the next home run episode that we want to do.
Yeah.
I would objectively like to bring in a friend of mine who suffers from the same addictions that I have suffered from.
Right.
And I would like to have that episode sort of done in more of an interview format where we sort of poke and prod and sort of pull out some information that might be important and useful for people to hear.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for the next episode, which will be on the topic of addiction, people.
Yeah.
And as always, you know, check us out on Instagram at riskythoughts.to. Thank you for tuning in tonight. And as Roy always mentions, we really do appreciate the listens.
Yes.
So I'll pass it off to Roy to say his good nights, and then we'll see you next time.
All right, guys. Good night. Risky thinkers.
Thanks, guys.